You are listening to Now That's a Good Question, a podcast series powered by SuRC, where changemakers from across the world answer your queries on sustainable lifestyle. After all, it's not just good on you, but also for the earth.
Welcome to the very first episode of Now That's a Good Question powered by SuRC. I am Arpit. I am a marketing and branding specialist, and I look after the marketing for Lenzing Fibers. It's an Austrian company. It's known for their environmentally responsible and globally recognized Tencel fiber brand. And today I'm going to be answering a few questions on the topic, how can the fashion industry be sustainable? Now that's a very interesting topic. So let's begin with the first one. The first question is, what is circular fashion? As a brand, it is very difficult to adapt sustainable practices overnight. It's equally difficult as a consumer, as a fashion follower as well. There's a lot that goes into making a brand sustainable, like, adopting concepts like circular fashion over here. But what exactly is circular fashion? Well, as the definition kind of is self-explanatory at a level, that it is about returning to the same point. That's what circularity is. Circular fashion is nothing but a system which is, focused on minimizing waste and making maximum use of the resources, which in this case is fashion itself. Now, normally what happens that when a garment piece, when an outfit, it is done, we normally discard it and it eventually may go to the landfill or wherever you are discarding it. But as per circular fashion, it should have the ability to be repaired. It should have the ability to be redesigned. We could rent it, we could swap it, but basically trying things which extend the life of that fashion. Ellen MacArthur Foundation, one of the leading global organizations which advocates for circular fashion, they say that one dump truck of textile gets landfill or burned every second now. And by 2025, we would have enough amount of textile landfill on our planet, which would be the same amount as the weight of humans on our planet. And that's a huge amount of waste we are talking about when it comes to just textiles and fashion. That's where this concept of circular fashion becomes so important in modern context. Current fashion, what you and me, what we wear, is something which would be called as linear. What does that mean? It means that an outfit is designed, it is manufactured, people like us, we wear it, and eventually it is decomposed, discarded first, if it decomposes later. But what does a circular fashion do? Well, it makes it circular. The garment is used more and more. It is made in a way that it could be made again and again in certain way, whether by redesigning it, renting it, swapping it, as I just said. And ultimately, it is made using safe materials. It is safe for the planet, safe for the people, and eventually when we discard it, throw it away, life is over, it can be recycled. It can be integrated back to the nature. That's what makes it circular again, and that is what is needed in the current scheme of things. Hope that helped you understand the concept of circular fashion to an extent. And now let's move on to the second question of today's episode. What measures can garment manufacturers take to ensure they are more sustainable? Well, for fashion brands and garment makers, it is tough to be 100% sustainable, but one has to strive to be the best version of themselves, right? So this can start by working at the grassroots level where the garment industry itself deep dives into what it does. Now, when it comes to manufacturing, there are 3 to 4 thumb rules which apply on any form of manufacturing, not just fashion. And that is where certain level of improvements are needed, certain level of process reworking is needed to make it better for the environment, to make it more sustainable in general. Now, what are those 4 points? So let me walk you through it one by one. The first is the raw material sourcing. Whatever garments are made by assembling certain raw material. It'll be fibers, it'll be fabrics, it'll be yarns, it'll be dyes, it'll be trims like buttons and zippers. And ultimately, those are all assembled together in a certain pattern, in certain design, eventually creating your favorite outfit. Now, that's where during the raw material sourcing itself, there are a lot of areas which could be looked after, like ensuring that the raw materials like fabrics and fibers don't impact the environment. They are of sound quality. quality can be divided into two simple parameters for the sake of easy understanding. First, that it is durable and long lasting. It shouldn't end up making a garment which will just wear itself out in 5 washes. That's exactly not something good for your money, not for your environment. At the same time, it needs to be made of materials which are safe for you, dyes and colors which are safe for your skin, safe for the environment. That is another important aspect of the raw materials which are being looked at. Coming to the second part, the production process itself. Now, that's where all these things are eventually assembled to create those outfits. Effective designs are one of the most important things. When we talk about design, we normally imagine the look of the garment, how the collar of the jacket is, or how the sleeve is, or how the fit is. But a design is much, much more than that. It is about the effective usage of material, what kind of material, how it is processed. The engineering which goes into a design is phenomenal in nature, and re-engineering it to a level where it is good for people and the environment is something of essence over here. Now, there could be designs, which lead to, let's say, less amount of wastage. That is something very obvious and that is needed. A very good example is how certain denims are made, certain t-shirts are made. Textiles, some of you may already know it, is known for using huge amount of water. They consume a lot of water. Now, what can be done over here? We can look at processes which consume less water, right? That's quite obvious. But how do we do it? So now there are different fibers which consume lesser amount of water when they are manufactured. Integrating such fibers or integrating fabrics which need lesser dyes, or they can have very good color with even lesser amount of dyes, makes the garment, makes the process much more sustainable to a certain level. Those are the small steps which need to be taken in order to ensure that the process itself is sustainable. Third step is about disposal and repurposing. Eventually, whenever a garment is made, there is certain amount of wastage. And this is not restricted to garment making itself. You look around yourself. If you're cooking something, there is something which is eventually wasted, maybe the peels of the vegetables or something else, which is eventually thrown away. Similarly, in garment making, you have excess fabric, the cuttings, the broken buttons, which are actually thrown away. What can be done? It is very important to figure out ways to repurpose it. There are fabrics which are maybe extra, not good enough to make those huge order quantities for big brands. That is the need to actually repurpose it, maybe make it available to, let's say individuals who want to create their own clothes or need it for some other purpose. So those are very small steps which can make huge change. And to give you a positive side of things, it's not that this is not happening. There are so many garment makers who are doing it. But we are in a scenario, we are at a stage where we need more and more garment makers, more and more brands to do it. Coming to the last stage, which is like very crucial to make garment manufacturing more and more sustainable, is about the people itself, the people who actually make our garments. Fashion industry, the garment industry has sadly acquired a bad name in terms of the way it treats its people. Well, needless to say that people who are actually making your garment deserve ethical treatment. They need to be treated in the right way. That is very crucial, as simple as that. Things like fair wages, livable wages are very crucial. Beyond that, other supports like medical facilities, access to sanitized and clean resources are very crucial to ensure that people who make your fashion, make your favorite outfit, are well taken care of and are living a life of dignity and respect. So there are some things which can be done to make garment manufacturers and their processes more sustainable. I really hope more and more garment manufacturers take these measures, and I know a lot of them are already doing it. And this will truly help the industry to become better, to redeem itself. And that is how it will move forward. That is how the future of this particular area would be. So now let's move on to the third question. Tencel fibers are world renowned for their environmentally responsible process. So can we throw some light on the sustainable practices adopted during the production process of Tencel fibers? Of course, Tencel fibers are globally well known for their environmentally responsible process. Now, the current fashion scenario where you have so many options so many styles, so many looks available for you through so many brands, through digital channels in shorter span of time. That's where it's important for raw materials to be as good as possible so that the impact on environment and yourself can be minimized. As simple as that. Now, at Lenzing, we make conscious efforts to not feed into any kind of rush to offer something which is not good. And that is what Lenzing has been known for. It is more than 80 years old company which has pioneered its way into environmentally responsible process. And as an industry expert, it kind of pleases me to see how Lenzing has grown. The Tencel fiber brand came into existence more than 30 years back, and this was at a time when sustainability as a process wasn't exactly even in the mainstream conversation what it is now. And that's where, at that time, 3 decades back, Lenzing Fibers, which is the parent company for Tencel, was innovating processes to make the fiber more sustainable. Now, what makes Tencel more sustainable? Well, there are three aspects: the way raw materials are sourced, the way the fibers are produced, and the life cycle after you dispose it. So the raw material for Tencel fiber is wood. So these are basically wood-based cellulosic fibers. Now, someone would actually question, and that is what I questioned when I first heard about Tencel, that if the fibers are coming out of wood, how are they sustainable? If they are cutting trees, how are they sustainable? Well, now that's where the whole dilemma is created. There's no problem, by the way, in taking nature as a raw material. The problem is with overconsumption, with taking resources from areas which are endangered or which are ecologically sensitive. So for Tencel, the trees are actually taken from sustainably planted resources. And these resources are actually certified by bodies which are responsible for managing wood. So the two bodies which actually certify wood for Tencel are FSC and PEFC. FSC stands for Forest Stewardship Council, and it is one of the most popular bodies along with PEFC, which is specific to Europe. These bodies are quite popular, and you would actually see them mentioned in a lot of materials where any form of wood is used, whether it's paper, whether it's cardboard, whether it's those paper cups. If you kind of turn it upside down, any good paper cup would have an FSC logo on it, highlighting that the raw material used for that paper is sourced from environmentally responsible plantations. And those are the same places where Tencel gets its fibers from. Now, that is like a very cool way to source things without impacting the environment. Now comes the second part, the production part, which is the heart of what Lenzing does and why it is known for. So Tencel fibers, there are two types of Tencel fibers, by the way, lyocell and modal. And basically, these are two different generations of fiber, and they go into different end application. That's the prime difference. And they both are known for their ecological process, environmentally responsible process, where they utilize all the raw materials very well, and there are no effluents which kind of go out. I'll talk about Tencel lyocell, which is something which is used by our partner SuRC over here. And again, one of the most popular third generation fibers which is available in the industry today. So Tencel lyocell is known for something called as a closed loop process. Now, what happens over here in a closed loop process? Well, every process has certain raw materials which go in, certain chemicals which go in, and eventually it is processed to create the end product. Now, over here, in case of Tencel, the raw materials, which is wood, which is converted into chips. First of all, these wood chips are 100% utilized. There is no wastage. Then the wood is converted into pulp. Pulp production also uses only renewable energy. And even when it comes to the process itself, it uses the solvents, the chemicals which go inside the machines are actually recovered again and again. The recovery percentage is more than 99%. That's what makes this process closed loop. They use significantly less amount of energy, significantly less amount of water, and whatever point something percentage of the product which comes out is also a byproduct for another process. So there's nothing which is actually being thrown away, consistently recycled. It's fed into the loop again and again, making it a closed loop process. Now, why this becomes important? This becomes important because the main problem with textile production is the discharge and effluents which are eventually sent back to the environment. And in this case, that thing is reduced to almost 100%. Now, when you're making something sustainable, what does it do on the end product feature? Does the product feature change? No, that's the beauty of Tencel. You get products which are strong, which are soft, which are breathable, which are very comfortable, and they are very high on environmental standards. And now coming to the last part, which is the disposal. Tencel fibers are known for their decomposition. These fibers are actually made in a way because of their natural characteristics. They are biodegradable and compostable. These fibers are certified by European bodies for being biodegradable in marine condition, which is water, in soil, in your normal home condition in form of compost, and in form of industrial compost as well. So that is how it works normally, kind of covering the whole track and ensuring that nowhere it damages the environment. So that is what primarily Tencel is known for. That is why it is preferred choice for brands across the globe. I hope it kind of gives you a good idea of what it gives to the industry. So now let's move on to the next question. The fourth question is, how does Tencel fiber compare with its counterparts like polyester and cotton? Now that's a very interesting question. Why is that interesting? Because if anyone would open their wardrobes and look at what their clothes are made out of, majority of the clothes, majority of it would either be made out of polyester or cotton or mixtures of both. Why? Because cotton and polyesters are the two most used fibers across the globe. Even in India, they are the top two consumed fibers. But then at the same time, they come with their own set of challenges, which are becoming more and more important to look at in the current scenario. So polyester, first of all, it is a petroleum-based product. That is, first of all, the very first challenge which comes into picture. Petroleum, we all know, is a limited resource. It takes a lot of time to form, and the current rate of consumption is very high. Now, that itself is a big problem. And eventually, at the end, it is not a biodegradable product. Well, technically, it is biodegradable, but the time period is massive. It could be hundreds of years, if not more than that. Now, that is a big problem in a time where we were just discussing that we have like a truckload of textile waste going into the landfill every second. We can't really afford to have products which would be adding on to landfills for hundreds of years. Now, those two are very major problem. What is the challenge with cotton? Well, while it's very comfortable to wear, it has its own set of challenge. The first is the huge consumption of resources. Cotton is cultivated on huge amount of land. That itself is a problem in current scenario with growing population, where land is something of very essence, where excess of land is not available easily. The amount of water which goes into cotton cultivation is very high. And eventually it requires chemicals, pesticides, which go into the land and can have adverse effects on the surroundings and even people working with it. Now, this is where Tencel has its own benefits. Now, the benefits, of course, come by the fact that this was a fiber invented much later to look at, to kind of answer the problems which other fibers may unintentionally end up creating. So Tencel, of course, comes from natural raw material. It has a botanic origin from sustainably managed plantations, which we just spoke about. The process is known to be quite circular, closed loop process, which kind of uses all the effluents, is very high on ensuring 100% usage of raw material, reducing any form of wastage, and eventually it's certified biodegradable. Now, the whole combination makes Tencel fiber very unique, very good when it comes to the sustainability standard. And this is not a claim what Lenzing makes or advocates of Tencel fiber make. This is something which is proven by different material indexes which rate fibers in their consumption of resources. Higgs MSI is another material index rating which rates materials and fibers on how they consume resources. And in those ratings, Tencel fibers have one of the lowest rating, which indicates the least amount of impact which they have on the environment, which kind of gives the consumers a very clear picture, very transparent picture that why this product is more sustainable. Now, having said that, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that polyester and cotton have a huge presence, and they themselves are trying, they are making processes which are better. Cotton is working on different variants which are much more better and addressing those problems. Polyester companies are working on recycling more and more so that the life cycle could be extended. So it's not about whether one fiber is good or bad. It's about how all the ingredient companies in the industry are making collective efforts to make themselves better and contribute to sustainable and circular economy. So I hope that kind of gives you idea about fibers. Now moving on to our fifth question. Well, it's about what advice would you give sustainable fashion brands who are about to start out? Well, first of all, it always makes me happy to interact with entrepreneurs, designers who are willing to adopt slow fashion and help the environment. Well, so the advice I normally give any startup in sustainable fashion category is to be mindful of their ingredients, is to understand what goes inside their fashion. A lot of time, fashion is only limited to how it looks, how nice your garment fits, how it drapes, what is the color of it, how the cuts kind of go well with your look. But there's a lot of engineering which goes inside those fabrics, those trims, those patterns, eventually creating your favorite outfit. And the core question is about understanding how those raw materials are sourced, how it is made. Because once you kind of re-engineer the same process, you realize that there are things which may look very appealing, but are actually made through, let's say, fibers which are not good for the environment, which would not biodegrade, or let's say processes which consume huge amount of water or are releasing crazy amount of toxic effluents in the surrounding. Now, those are not exactly good processes. And ideally, once you understand that, you kind of feel guilty of wearing that. Now, that is where once you understand, it's very easier to create the right set of ingredients, source the right set of ingredients, and offer right products to your consumers and your followers. This is something I always insist to my friends who are running their own startups and labels, and to anyone, to the entrepreneurs and friends I meet who want to run their own sustainable fashion category. And now moving on to the last question for today. One question about circular fashion that made you go, now that's a good question. So one question that actually made me go, now that's a good question. Well, working close to a decade in the fashion industry now, having the opportunity to work with some top designers and retailers in India and around the world, there are a lot of questions actually which have baffled me, which I found very interesting. But the whole discussion around what is 100% sustainability is a topic which has caught up in the last few years, especially in the last 5 to 6 years. We have seen it making its way into Indian fashion conversations also, which is such a good sign. But there's an increasing new discussion about 100% sustainability. How do I make something which is 100% sustainable? That to me was a very, very good question when I first heard of it. I read it in different forums that, what is 100% sustainability? What makes something 100% sustainable? And honestly, I still wonder, can something be 100% sustainable? And I highly doubt it. Why? Because whatever we make, whatever we wear, will always directly or indirectly consume certain amount of natural resources. That's how anything and everything around us is made. It is directly or indirectly a result of natural raw materials. So clearly, we will always be using some amount of natural raw material. But what can definitely make something very high in terms of sustainability is the optimum utilization, the right amount, which is not a burden on the environment, is something which for me makes a very good definition of optimum sustainable product. As long as something is meeting the optimum standards of sustainability, it is a very good sustainable product. And again, this is a huge topic of discussion. We can just have a complete session just talking about it. But I'll kind of end it over here saying that as long as you understand where your raw materials are coming from. That's a very good start, which would kind of create conversation leading to bigger changes, what is very much needed in the fashion industry right now. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Now That's a Good Question, powered by SuRC. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. See you next week with another segment of Now That's a Good Question, powered by SuRC.